Commander Velinara's day started like any other on the monitoring station. The spider-like alien sat at her control panel, her 8 eyes scanning hundreds of screens. Space was mostly quiet in this sector. That was how she liked it. Then the alarm screamed. Velinara's legs moved fast across the console. Red lights flashed everywhere. A distress signal was coming through, and it was bad. Very bad. Her translator worked hard to process the message. It was being broadcast in 17 different languages at once. Please ... anyone. Help us ... The Krell have come ... mercy ... We need mercy. The voice belonged to a Lixian. Velinara knew their species well. They were peaceful bird-like creatures who never hurt anyone. They lived on Threshold Station, a trade post near the edge of Coalition space. 3,000 of them called that station home, and now the Krell were there. Velinara felt something cold run through her body. The Krell warband was the worst news possible. They were massive reptilian warriors who took what they wanted: slaves, resources, technology. They had been attacking colonies for months. The Coalition military tried to stop them, but the Krell always disappeared before help arrived. She checked the nearest military ship. 6 days away. The Lixians would all be dead or taken by then. Her claws tapped the console, thinking. There had to be someone closer. Anyone. She pulled up the sector map and searched for any vessel within range. Mining ships. Cargo haulers. Nothing with weapons. Nothing that could fight. Then she saw it. A small dot on her screen, just 4 hours from Threshold Station. The ship's registration made her pause. Her translator double-checked the words because she thought she read them. Wrong. Origin. Earth. Species. Human. Velinara stared at the screen. Humans. The Deathworlders. She had never met one, but every Coalition member knew about them. 20 years ago, a survey ship found Earth by accident. What they discovered terrified the galaxy. Earth was rated as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating ever recorded. Most planets in the Coalition were Class 1 or Class 2, nice and safe. Earth was 12. The survey team's report read like a horror story. The planet's gravity would crush most species. The atmosphere had poison levels of oxygen that burned through tissue. Diseases lived everywhere. The weather could kill in minutes with freezing cold or burning heat. Earthquakes shook the ground. Volcanoes exploded. Storms the size of small moons threw lightning and water. And the predators. Oh, the predators. Giant reptiles that could swallow a person whole. Cats with teeth like knives. Bears that stood 3 meters tall. Tiny insects that carried death in their bite. Even the plants could kill you, but the worst part was the humans themselves. They ate other predators. They ran for hours without stopping. They healed from injuries that would kill any other species. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and scary. The Coalition decided to quarantine Earth. Let the humans have their nightmare planet. Stay away from them. Some trade was allowed, but no military contact. No one wanted to see what Deathworlders could do in a fight. Now Velinara was thinking the impossible. She was thinking about asking humans for help. Her primary claw hovered over the communication button. This could go wrong in so many ways. Humans might ignore the call. They might make things worse. They might decide to take the station for themselves. But the Lixians were dying right now. She could hear their screams in the background of the distress signal. Velinara pressed the button. The signal took a few seconds to reach the human ship. The vessel was called Redemption's Price. Strange name. Humans had strange names for everything. A voice answered. Female. Calm. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Redemption's Price. Go ahead. Velinara explained the situation as fast as she could. The Krell attack. The 3,000 civilians. The trapped Lixians. The coalition forces being too far away. There was silence on the other end. It stretched so long that Velinara thought the human had disconnected. Then Captain Chun spoke again. "We're 4 hours out. How many Krell?" Scanners show 3 assault ships. Approximately 200 warriors inside the station. Another pause. Velinara heard voices in the background. Humans talking to each other in quick, sharp words. "Captain Chun," Velinara said carefully, "I must inform you that the Krell are extremely dangerous. They are 7 feet tall, heavily armored, and very strong. They have destroyed 4 colonies in the past 2 months. The coalition considers them a top-level threat." The human made a sound. It took Velinara a moment to realize it was laughter. Not happy laughter. The kind of laugh someone makes when they hear something foolish. "Commander, we've received your data," Captain Chun said. "We're changing course now. We'll be at Threshold Station in 4 hours." Chun out, the transmission ended. Velinara sat in her chair, wondering what she had just done. She had called for help from the monsters everyone feared. She told herself it was the right choice. The only choice. Deep in her station, she pulled up the human ship's file. Redemption's price was a small cargo vessel. The crew numbered only 12. 12 humans against 200 Krell warriors. Velinara had made many decisions in her long career. She had commanded stations and ships. She had negotiated treaties. She had saved lives and sometimes failed to save them. But this decision felt different. This felt like opening a door that could never be closed. She watched her screen, tracking both signals. The Lixian distress call continued, growing weaker. The human ship moved closer, steady and fast. In 4 hours, the galaxy would learn something new. Velinara just hoped it would be a lesson about heroism, and not about unleashing something worse than the Krell. She began preparing her report for Coalition Command. They would be angry that she contacted the humans. They would ask questions. They would want to know why she broke protocol. The answer was simple. The Lixians screamed for mercy. Someone had to answer. And right now, the only ones close enough to help were the Deathworlders. Velinara looked at her screen one more time. The human ship was moving fast, faster than it should be able to. Those engines were pushing hard. Someone on that ship was in a hurry. She allowed herself a small moment of hope. Maybe the humans would help. Maybe they were more than the monsters everyone feared. Or maybe the galaxy was about to learn why you never wake up the predators from the worst. Planet in known space. 4 hours until the answer. Sarah. Chun stood in the bridge of Redemption's price, watching the screens show Threshold Station growing larger. Next to her, Marcus Webb worked at the tactical station. His fingers moved fast across the controls, pulling up information. 3 Krell assault ships, Marcus said. They've locked onto the station like parasites. Thermal scans show about 200 heat signatures inside. Krell body temperature runs hot, so these readings are clear. Sarah nodded. She had fought many battles before joining the merchant fleet. The scars on her arms told those stories. She knew how to read a tactical situation. This one was bad. What about the Lixians? She asked. Marcus adjusted the scanners. Hard to tell. Their body temperature is lower, and there's a lot of interference. Best guess, maybe 2,000 still alive. The Krell have been there for 3 hours already. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. 3 hours was a long time for defenseless people to suffer. She pushed the anger down and focused. Anger was useful in a fight. But planning required a clear head. Pull up everything we have on Krell physiology, she ordered. A new screen appeared. Dr. Amara Okonkwo's face showed up on the communication panel. The doctor was in the medical bay, already preparing. She knew what was coming. The Krell are impressive by galactic standards, Amara explained. Her accent carried hints of her Nigerian roots. 7 feet tall on average. Thick scales that work like natural armor. Muscle density about 40% higher than the Coalition average. Their homeworld is 0.7 gravity. Lower than Earth, Marcus noted. Exactly, Amara continued. They're strong compared to most species, but their bone structure is actually less dense than ours. Earth's higher gravity made us develop stronger bones, denser muscles, more efficient organs. A Krell might look scary, but their bodies aren't built for the kind of stress ours handle every day. Sarah listened carefully. This was important information. The Krell had been terrorizing the galaxy because they were bigger and stronger than most species. But humans didn't come from most species. Humans came from Earth, where everything tried to kill you before breakfast. What about their weapons? She asked Marcus. Standard plasma rifles. Energy weapons, common in the Coalition military. They punch through most armor types, but they have issues. Marcus pulled up weapon specifications. They overheat after sustained fire. They don't work well in extreme cold or if they get wet. And they're useless if an electromagnetic pulse hits them. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. So they're used to fighting people who use similar technology. Yeah, Marcus agreed. They've never fought anyone who still uses bullets. The rest of the crew gathered in the bridge. 12 humans in total. All former military from different Earth nations. Sarah knew each of them, trusted them with her life. They had chosen to leave Earth together, to see the galaxy, to make a living among the stars. They never expected to become soldiers again. But here they were. Listen up, Sarah said. You all know the situation. 3,000 civilians, mostly Lixians. 200 Krell warriors. The Lixians are pacifists from a low-gravity world. They can't fight back. They've been waiting for help for 3 hours. She paused, looking at each face. Some were young, barely 20. Others were older, with gray in their hair. All of them had the same expression. They were ready. The Krell think they're the big predators, Sarah continued. They're used to everyone being scared of them. They're used to winning because they're bigger and stronger than everyone else they've met. They haven't met us, said James Holland. Everyone called him Doc, even though he was a combat medic, not a doctor. He was a big man with dark skin and kind eyes that had seen too much war. Double quotes. No, they haven't, Sarah agreed. We're going in hard and fast. No stealth. I'm going to give them one chance to surrender. They won't take it. The Krell don't know fear. They're going to learn. The crew moved to the armory. Sarah watched them gear up with practiced efficiency. They didn't use the powered armor suits common in the galaxy. Those were too complicated, too dependent on technology that could fail. Instead, they wore simple ballistic plates. Heavy ceramic and steel that would make most aliens collapse under the weight. Humans wore it like second skin. The weapons came next. No plasma rifles or energy beams for them. Sarah's crew carried rifles and pistols that used gunpowder and bullets. Ancient technology by galactic standards. But bullets didn't care about electromagnetic pulses. They didn't overheat. They worked in vacuum, underwater, in extreme cold or heat. You could drop them in mud, and they still fired. Earth had learned a long time ago that simple technology was reliable technology. Doctor, what's the medical situation going to look like? Sarah asked through the comm. Amara's voice came back. The Lixians have fragile bone structure. They're going to have a lot of fractures, internal injuries. Their psychology is delicate too. This kind of trauma will affect them for years. I'm preparing for the worst. Sarah respected Amara's dedication. The doctor could have stayed on Earth, worked in safe hospitals, made good money. Instead, she was here, ready to help aliens most humans had never even heard of. That was the thing about her crew. They could have lived comfortable lives back home. They chose to be here instead. Redemption's price moved into position near Threshold Station. Sarah could see the Krell assault ships now, ugly angular vessels covered in weapons. They looked designed to intimidate. They probably worked on most species. Sarah opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies. Her voice was calm and clear. Krell Warband, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Redemption's Price. You have attacked a civilian station and murdered innocent people. Release your captives immediately and surrender. This is your only warning. The response came fast. A deep voice, full of arrogance and contempt. Pathetic coalition coward. Leave or die. We take what we want. We fear nothing. Sarah heard laughter in the background. The Krell thought this was funny. Some small ship making threats. They had no idea what was coming. I gave you a chance, Sarah said quietly, then closed the channel. She looked at her crew. They were ready. Weapons checked. Armor secured. Game faces on. These were people who had survived the worst planet in the galaxy. They had hunted predators, survived diseases, endured injuries that would kill most aliens. The Krell were about to learn a hard lesson. They weren't the apex predators anymore. Marcus, bring us in hard, Sarah ordered. Dock at the emergency port. Breach charges ready. We're going in loud. The ship moved forward, engines burning bright. Sarah felt the familiar calm settle over her. This was what humans did best. When someone screamed for help, when innocents suffered, when bullies needed stopping, humans answered the call. The galaxy had spent 20 years being afraid of Deathworlders. Today, the Krell would learn why that fear was justified. Sarah checked her rifle one last time. Let's show them what happens when you hurt the innocent, she said. Redemption's Price accelerated toward Threshold Station. The hunt was on. The shaped charges exploded with a sound like thunder. Metal screamed and tore apart as Redemption's Price forced its way into Threshold Station. Alarms blared throughout the corridors. Emergency lights flashed red. The Krell inside stopped what they were doing and turned toward the breach. They expected coalition peacekeepers. They expected polite warnings and non-lethal weapons. They expected the usual soft species that begged them to stop. That followed rules even when fighting monsters. Instead, 12 humans poured through the smoking hole in the hall. The first Krell warriors rounded the corner at a run. They were massive creatures, 7 feet of muscle and scales, carrying plasma rifles. They saw the humans and laughed. These short creatures, barely 6 feet tall, thought they could fight? The humans opened fire. The sound was unlike anything the Krell had ever heard. Not the clean hum of plasma weapons. This was raw, brutal noise that made the walls shake. Gunpowder explosions in rapid succession, each one sending a piece of metal flying at speeds that broke the sound barrier. The first Krell's armor shattered. The bullet punched through his chest and out his back. He fell, confusion on his face. His friend beside him took 3 rounds before his brain understood he was dead. The third Krell managed to raise his rifle. Marcus shot him twice in the head, 5 seconds. 3 Krell down. The others fell back, screaming into their communicators. Sarah moved forward with her team, checking corners with practiced precision. This was close quarters combat, and humans had been perfecting it for thousands of years. Every movement was economical. No wasted energy. No hesitation. More Krell appeared, trying to set up a defensive position. They fired their plasma rifles down the corridor. The bright bolts of energy lit up the darkness. 2 hit the walls. 1 caught Sarah's shoulder plate, melting the ceramic but not penetrating through. The humans didn't stop. They moved through the plasma fire like they didn't care. Because compared to the things that hunted humans on Earth, compared to the dangers they grew up with, this wasn't that scary. Doc led 3 others down a side corridor. They moved fast in the lighter gravity, almost bouncing with each step. Earth's heavy gravity made humans strong. Here, they felt light as air. A Krell jumped out from a doorway, swinging a massive blade. Doc didn't shoot. He stepped inside the swing, too close for the blade to hit him, and drove his combat knife up under the Krell's jaw. The warrior dropped. Doc kept moving without breaking stride. Sarah's team reached a section where the Krell had gathered Lixian prisoners. The bird-like aliens were huddled together, their hollow bones making them look fragile as glass. Several were already dead, killed for entertainment or as warnings. 8 Krell guarded them, thinking they were safe behind their hostages. Sarah gave hand signals. Her team spread out, finding angles. The Krell noticed them too late. The humans fired together, precise shots that dropped each warrior before they could hurt anyone else. The Lixians screamed and covered their heads. "You're safe now," Sarah told them in careful Lixian. The translator made her words sound strange, but the meaning was clear. "Stay here. We'll come back for you." The Lixians stared at her with huge eyes. These humans were covered in Krell blood, carrying weapons that smoked and smelled of death, moving through violence like they were born in it. The Lixians had been told humans were dangerous. Now they understood, but the humans weren't hurting them. They were protecting them. Throughout the station, the pattern continued. The Krell tried to fight back with everything they had. They used their superior numbers, tried to ambush the humans, attempted to use their knowledge of the station layout. Nothing worked. In Section 7, the Krell cut the power, plunging everything into darkness. They had excellent night vision and thought this would give them an advantage. They were wrong. Humans evolved to hunt in all conditions. Sarah's team had practiced fighting in the dark since basic training. They moved through the corridors using sound and memory. While the Krell's own movements gave them away, the Krell tried biological warfare next, releasing toxic gas into a sealed section where 3 humans were cornered. The warriors waited outside, confident that the poison would do their work. 10 minutes later, the door opened. The 3 humans walked out, eyes watering but still combat ready. Earth's atmosphere was poison to most species. Humans breathed it every day. Their bodies knew how to filter toxins, how to survive in hostile environments. A little gas wasn't going to stop creatures that evolved to handle everything from snake venom to radiation. The Krell warriors stared in disbelief. Then the humans shot them. Doc found a group of Lixian children trapped in a cafeteria. The Krell were trying to cut through the doors with plasma torches. The children inside were crying, terrified. Doc and his team approached from above, using maintenance shafts too small for the large Krell to navigate. They dropped into the corridor behind the enemy. The fight was over in seconds. Doc didn't give them a chance to threaten the children. No warnings. No mercy for those who hurt kids. When he opened the cafeteria door, the Lixian children screamed. They saw this huge human covered in blood, carrying weapons, face hard as stone. They thought he was another monster. Doc knelt down slowly. He removed his helmet, showing his scarred face. His voice was gentle when he spoke in Lixian. "Hey, little ones. I know I look scary, but I promise you're safe now. We're going to get you back to your parents." A small Lixian child, barely 3 feet tall, stepped forward cautiously. "Are you a human? A Deathworlder?" "Yes," Doc admitted. "You saved us?" "That's what humans do, kid. We protect people who can't protect themselves." The Krell commander finally understood the scope of his mistake. His warriors were dying. These weren't the soft coalition species he was used to fighting. These were predators from a planet that made the Krell homeworld look like paradise. He gathered his remaining forces, maybe 60 warriors, in the central hub. They would make their stand here, all together. Numbers had to count for something. Sarah's team converged on the hub from 6 different directions. The Krell saw them coming and opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts filled the air like a deadly light show. The humans took cover and returned fire. The sound was deafening. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls. Plasma melted through steel. Smoke filled the air. The battle was chaos and noise and violence, but the humans moved through it like dancers in a familiar routine. They communicated with hand signals and short words. They covered each other, advanced in teams, never gave the Krell a chance to organize. One by one, the Krell fell. Their natural armor meant nothing against weapons designed to kill Earth's megafauna. Their strength didn't matter when bullets moved faster than they could react. Their numbers shrank rapidly. The Krell commander watched his forces die, and finally felt something his species rarely experienced: fear, real, genuine terror. These humans were unstoppable. They took injuries that should have killed them and kept fighting. They moved too fast, hit too hard, endured too much. He grabbed his communicator and broadcast to the human ship. "We surrender. We yield. Please, mercy, mercy." Sarah heard the transmission. She looked at her team, saw the determination in their eyes. They remembered the dead Lixians, the murdered children, the civilians who had screamed for mercy and received none. Her voice was cold when she responded. "You didn't show mercy when they begged. You'll get exactly what you gave." But she held up her hand, stopping her team from advancing. "Krell warriors, drop your weapons and lie face down. Now, anyone still holding a weapon in 10 seconds dies." Weapons clattered to the floor. The surviving Krell, these proud warriors who had terrorized entire systems, lay down like obedient children, broken, defeated, afraid. 3 hours after the breach, Threshold Station was secure. 200 Krell had attacked. 157 were dead. 43 survived only because Sarah ordered her team to accept surrenders once the civilians were safe. The human casualties were 2 injuries. Marcus had a cracked rib from a plasma burn. One of the younger crew members had a concussion from fallen debris. Both refused to leave the station until every Lixian was accounted for. In the cafeteria, Doc sat with the Lixian children, telling them stories about Earth while they waited for their parents. The children were still scared, but they were alive. That was what mattered. Sarah walked through the corridors, seeing the results of the battle. It was brutal. Necessary, but brutal. She had been a soldier long enough to know that violence sometimes was the only answer to violence, but she also knew that what they did here would change things. The galaxy would hear about this. They would see what humans could do in a fight. Some would be grateful. Others would be more afraid than ever. The Deathworlders had answered the call for help. And heaven help anyone who made that call necessary. Commander Velinara arrived with Coalition forces 6 hours after the humans secured Threshold Station. Her ship docked carefully, and she walked through the corridors with growing disbelief. She had seen battlefields before. She had witnessed the aftermath of Krell attacks. But this was different. The Krell bodies told a story of brutal efficiency. Clean shots. No wasted ammunition. Every kill was purposeful and quick. The humans hadn't played with their enemy or made them suffer. They had simply eliminated threats with the same efficiency someone might use to remove a virus. But what struck Velinara most was the other scene happening alongside the carnage. In the medical bay, Dr. Amara Okonkwo worked with tireless dedication. The human doctor moved between injured Lixians with gentle hands, administering medication, setting broken bones, speaking soft words of comfort. Velinara watched through the doorway. The same species that had torn through 200 Krell warriors was now humming a strange earth melody while bandaging a Lixian child's wing. The contrast was staggering. How is this possible? Velinara whispered to her second officer. I don't know, Commander. They're unlike anything we've encountered. In the cargo bay, the surviving Krell sat in shocked silence. 43 warriors, each one a veteran of dozens of raids, now looked like frightened children. Their scales had lost their luster. Their eyes were wide and empty. One of them was rocking back and forth, repeating the same words in his language. Valinara's translator picked it up. They don't stop. They just don't stop. We shot them, and they didn't stop. A coalition psychologist examined the prisoners and came to Valinara with his report. Commander, these warriors are traumatized. Severe psychological damage. They've suffered a complete breakdown of their worldview. Explain, Valinara said. The Krell culture is built on being the apex predator. They're the biggest, the strongest, the most feared. That's their entire identity. Now they've met something that hunted them like they were prey. Their minds can't process it. Valinara found Captain Sarah Chun in the station's command center. The human was studying damage reports, coordinating with coalition rescue teams, organizing the safe transfer of Lixian civilians. She looked tired. The armor she wore was scorched and dented in a dozen places. Captain Chun, Valinara said carefully. Sarah turned. Up close, the human was shorter than Valinara, but the commander felt an instinctive wariness anyway. This was a predator. Every movement, every glance, every breath spoke of controlled danger. Commander Valinara, your forces have good timing. We've secured the station, but we need help transporting the civilians to safety. Yes, of course. We'll handle that immediately. Valinara paused. Captain, you did this with 12 people. 12 humans against 200 Krell. Sarah shrugged, and the gesture looked strange in her heavy armor. We did what needed doing. Will there be legal consequences? We technically violated coalition law by intervening in a sovereign space matter. Valinara's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Consequences? Captain, you saved 3,000 lives. You neutralized a threat that has been plaguing coalition space for months. She struggled for words. You terrified every government from here to the core worlds. But no, there won't be consequences. Not the kind you're worried about. The truth of that statement became clear over the following days. Coalition analysts reviewed the security footage from Threshold Station. The recordings were played in military academies, government chambers, and intelligence briefings across 100 worlds. One analyst, a crystalline being named Trath, watched the same footage 17 times. Each viewing made him more disturbed. He prepared a report for Coalition Command that would change galactic policy forever. The humans don't just fight better, he wrote. They fight in a way that suggests their entire evolution was shaped by constant warfare. They take injuries that should incapacitate them and continue operating. They process pain differently than any species we've studied. Their tactical thinking assumes worst-case scenarios that most species can't even imagine. Another section of his report focused on a specific moment. Marcus Webb took 3 plasma burns that should have been fatal. The footage showed him applying a self-sealing bandage with steady hands, then continuing to fight for another 20 minutes before seeking medical attention. This should not be possible, Trath noted. The pain alone should have caused shock. The tissue damage should have stopped him. But human physiology includes redundant systems, aggressive healing factors, and pain tolerance that evolved to let them escape predators even when injured. They're built to keep fighting past the point when any rational species would have fallen. The political response split the coalition down the middle. Half the governments wanted to recruit human military forces immediately. Offers poured into redemption's price, security contracts, military training positions. Some planets offered citizenship and generous payment for human protection. The other half wanted to reinforce the quarantine around Earth, make it stronger, keep the Deathworlders contained. Because if 12 humans could do this, what could 12,000 do? 12 million? But on Threshold Station, something quieter was happening. Something that the politicians and analysts missed in their fear and fascination. The Lixian survivors were gathering near the docking bay, where Redemption's price was moored. They brought offerings of food and art, small gifts that meant everything in their culture. An elder named Shiraka approached Sarah Chun. The old Lixian's wings trembled with emotion. 3 of her children had been trapped in the cafeteria that Doc rescued. "Captain Chun," Shiraka said, her voice like wind through crystals. "We were told humans were dangerous, violent, to be feared above all things." Sarah looked uncomfortable with the attention. "We can be dangerous, yes, but you came when no one else could. You fought for people you had never met. You protected our children with your own bodies." Shiraka reached out with a trembling wing claw and touched Sarah's scarred hand. "You bled for us. What do you call this on Earth?" Sarah thought about all the words she could use. Honor, duty, service, warrior's code that said the strong protect the weak. The human instinct that couldn't stand by while innocents suffered. "We call it being human," she finally said. Shiraka nodded slowly. "Then humanity is not what we were told. You are dangerous, yes, but dangerous to those who do evil. Dangerous to those who hurt the innocent. This is a good kind of dangerous." More Lixians approached, wanting to thank the humans personally. Doc sat with children on his shoulders, making them laugh despite everything they'd been through. Amara taught Lixian parents how to care for their children's injuries. Marcus helped repair damaged station systems, his engineering skills as sharp as his combat abilities. Velinara watched it all and sent a message to Coalition Command. "I have observed the humans extensively. Yes, they are the most effective combat force I have ever witnessed. Yes, they are dangerous in ways we barely understand. But they are also compassionate, protective, and driven by a moral code that values innocent life above their own safety. I recommend we change our approach to Earth immediately." The recommendation was controversial, but the evidence was clear. The footage showed everything. The precision of the human assault. The care they took with civilians. The way they accepted surrenders once the threat was contained. The gentleness Dr. Okonkwo showed with her patients. A new classification was created in coalition law. Protectorate species. Worlds that were dangerous but trustworthy. Worlds that could be allowed more freedom because they had proven they would use their power responsibly. Earth became the first protectorate. The quarantine was partially lifted. Humans could now travel freely, serve in coalition security forces, and participate in galactic society. But not everyone was happy about this. In the deep core systems, where the oldest and most powerful species lived, a different conversation was happening. The hierarchy, the true power behind the coalition, watched the recordings from Threshold Station with cold calculation. "This changes the balance," one of them said. "Humanity is too powerful, too unpredictable. We must act." Plans were made in secret. Tests were prepared. The hierarchy would see if humans could fail, if they could be broken, if they were truly as unstoppable as they appeared. Sarah Chun sat in her captain's chair on Redemption's price, looking at the messages flooding in. Job offers. Requests for help. Pleas from colonies under threat. The galaxy had learned that Deathworlders would answer when you called. Now everyone was calling. What do we do? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at her crew. They were tired. They deserved rest. But outside, people needed help. The strong always needed to protect the weak. That was the way. "We answer," she said simply. "That's what we do." 6 months passed since Threshold Station. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody expected. The Krell warband no longer existed. When word spread about their defeat, everything fell apart. The species they had enslaved rose up in rebellion. Rival factions moved in to take territory. The 43 survivors stayed in Coalition custody, their testimony helping to dismantle what remained of Krell operations across dozens of systems. But they also stayed in custody for another reason: protection, not from their enemies, from humans. The survivors lived in constant fear that Sarah Chun and her crew might come back to finish the job. Sarah's crew had become famous, though they didn't want to be. The footage from Threshold Station was analyzed in every military academy in Coalition space. Students studied human tactics, trying to understand how 12 individuals accomplished what entire battalions couldn't. The offers kept coming. Corporations wanted to hire human security forces. Planetary governments offered huge payments for protection. Coalition military commands begged for human advisors. Sarah turned down most of them. She accepted carefully chosen contracts, always the ones that involved protecting civilians or hunting pirates who hurt innocent people. Redemptions. Price wasn't alone anymore either. Other human ships had ventured out from Earth, following the path Sarah's crew had blazed. Some became merchants. Others became explorers. A few became protectors like Sarah's team. Earth's status had officially changed to protectorate. Humans could now travel freely through Coalition space. They could join Coalition security forces, though this created problems. Most species simply couldn't match human physical capabilities. A human private could outfight an alien sergeant. A human civilian could survive injuries that would kill a Coalition soldier. Instead of direct military integration, humans became trainers and advisors. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had pioneered this approach. She established the first human-alien medical exchange program. Her research on treating trauma across different species became required reading for every Coalition medic dot. She taught alien doctors about human psychology, about how trauma affected the mind, about the importance of mental health alongside physical healing. Concepts that seemed obvious to humans were revolutionary in the Coalition. On Earth, we learned a long time ago that surviving isn't the same as healing. Amara explained to a class of alien medical students, "Your bodies might recover, but your mind remembers. We have to treat both." The students listened with fascination. Most Coalition species had never developed sophisticated mental health care. They didn't need to. Their worlds were safe, their lives peaceful. They hadn't spent millions of years dealing with trauma and loss the way humans had. But not everyone welcomed the changes. The hierarchy, the oldest and most powerful group in the galaxy, watched humanity's rise with concern. These ancient species had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years. They controlled trade routes, influenced elections, and decided which species got access to advanced technology. Humans threatened that control, not because they wanted power, but because they couldn't be controlled. You couldn't intimidate a species from a death world. You couldn't buy people who valued principles over profit. You couldn't manipulate creatures who had survived worse than anything the galaxy could throw at them. In a secret chamber far from prying eyes, the hierarchy made plans. "We need to test them," said one member. "A being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix. See if they can fail. See if they can be broken." "How?" Another asked. "The same way we've controlled every other species. Create a situation where they cannot win. Make them choose between impossible options. Show the galaxy that humans are not invincible." Messages went out through untraceable channels. 3 colonies, far from Coalition protection, suddenly faced coordinated attacks. Pirates appeared from nowhere, with weapons too advanced for normal criminals. The attacks were timed perfectly to stretch coalition response forces too thin dot, and each colony sent the same desperate message. Help us, please, anyone. Sarah Chun sat in her captain's chair when the first distress call arrived. Then the second. Then the third. Marcus pulled up the tactical display, and his face went hard. It's a trap, he said flatly. Obviously, Sarah agreed. She studied the positions. 3 colonies, each one at least 2 days apart, at maximum speed. Thousands of civilians at each location. All under attack at the same time. We can't save all 3, Doc said quietly. We have to choose. The crew gathered on the bridge, looking at the impossible situation. If they went to one colony, the other 2 would fall. No matter what they chose, people would die. It was exactly the kind of scenario designed to break heroes. Make them fail publicly. Show the galaxy that humans couldn't save everyone. Sarah looked at each member of her crew. They were tired. They had scars that hadn't healed properly. They had nightmares about the people they couldn't save. But there was no hesitation in their eyes. Send a message to Coalition Command, Sarah ordered. Tell them about all 3 attacks. Tell them we're responding, but we need other human ships in the sector to help. The communications officer nodded and got to work. Within an hour, responses came back. 3 other human vessels were within range. Not military ships, just merchants and explorers who heard the call and changed course immediately. The wandering star is closest to the mining colony, Marcus reported. The New Dawn can reach the agricultural settlement. We'll take the refugee station. It wasn't perfect. The other human ships weren't combat vessels. They had smaller crews, fewer weapons. But they were human. They would find a way. Sarah opened a channel to all 3 ships. Faces appeared on her screen, captains from different backgrounds, but with the same determined expression. You know this is a setup, she told them. Someone wants to see us fail. They want us to choose who lives and who dies. Then we'll disappoint them, said Captain Rodriguez of the Wandering Star. We'll save everyone. Damn right we will, agreed Captain Nakamura of the New Dawn. That's what humans do. The third captain, a young woman named Park, just nodded. Give us the tactical data. We'll make it work. Sarah felt pride surge through her chest. This was humanity at its best. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't give up. They found a way. They worked together. They saved people even when it seemed impossible. Redemption's price jumped to faster-than-light travel, racing toward the refugee station. Sarah gathered her crew and laid out the plan. It would be risky. The enemy had more forces, better positions, probably traps waiting. We've been in tight spots before, Doc reminded everyone. We always find a way through. This is different, Sarah said honestly. Whoever set this up knows about Threshold Station. They know what we can do. They'll be ready for us. So we'll be ready for them, Marcus countered. Let them prepare. Let them plan. They're still not from Earth. They still don't understand what that means. The sentiment spread through the crew. Yes, this was dangerous. Yes, people might die. But giving up meant letting innocents suffer. That wasn't acceptable. That wasn't human. Redemption's price dropped out of FTL near the refugee station. The scene was bad. 2 attack ships had the station surrounded. Weapons fire lit up space. Parts of the station were already damaged, atmosphere leaking into the void. Scan shows about 50 hostiles on the station, Marcus reported. Unknown species, well armed. They're executing civilians in the main plaza. Sarah felt cold rage settle into her bones. Then we stopped them. All teams, prepare for combat insertion. Let's show these bastards why you don't mess with human protected space. As the crew geared up, Sarah recorded a message. Not for the enemy. Not for the coalition. For Earth Command. For the people back home who wondered what their explorers were doing out in the galaxy. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Redemption's Price. 6 months ago, we responded to a distress call from Threshold Station. We saved 3,000 civilians and became heroes to some, monsters to others. Today, someone tried to trap us. They attacked 3 colonies at once, thinking we'd have to choose who to save. They wanted us to fail. They wanted to prove that humanity isn't special. She paused, checking her rifle one more time. They were wrong. We called for help, and other humans answered. Right now, across 3 star systems, human crews are fighting to protect people they've never met. We're not doing this for glory or payment. We're doing it because it's right. Because when someone screams for help, humans answer. That's what we've always done. That's what we'll always do. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing the same determination reflected in every face. We came to the stars to explore, to trade, to find our place among the galaxies. We didn't expect to become protectors, but maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone who knows what it's like to suffer. Someone who remembers what it's like to be helpless. Someone who will fight for those who can't fight for themselves. The airlock opened. Sarah and her crew moved into the docking tube, weapons ready. We're the Deathworlders, Sarah said into the recording. We survived the worst planet in known space. We conquered diseases, predators, and disasters that would wipe out entire civilizations. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're not the most advanced. But we're the ones who will come running when you call for help. We're the ones who will stand between you and the monsters. We're the ones who answer when innocents scream for mercy. She ended the recording and looked at her team. Ready? 12 voices answered as one. Ready? They breached the station. The fight was brutal and fast. The enemy had prepared, yes. They had studied human tactics. They had better weapons and defensive positions. It didn't matter. Because they made one critical mistake. They thought they were fighting soldiers. They thought they were fighting warriors. They were fighting something far more dangerous. They were fighting humans who had heard innocents cry for help. They were fighting people from a planet that taught them to protect their tribe at any cost. They were fighting Deathworlders who had decided that these civilians were under their protection. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, the refugee station was secure. Casualties were heavy among the attackers. 0 civilian deaths after human intervention. 2 crew injuries, both minor. Reports came in from the other colonies. Captain Rodriguez had saved the miners. Captain Nakamura secured the agricultural settlement. All 3 attacks repelled. The trap had failed completely. Sarah stood on the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Other ships were arriving now. Coalition medical vessels. Transport ships to evacuate civilians. The bureaucrats who would analyze and report and politicize everything. But right now, in this moment, Sarah just felt tired. And proud. And ready to do it all again tomorrow if needed. A young refugee, barely 20 years old, approached her cautiously. He was from a species Sarah didn't recognize, with blue skin and 4 arms. You're human? He asked nervously. Yes. I heard stories. They said humans were scary, dangerous, that we should stay away from Earth ships. Sarah smiled gently. We are dangerous. To people who hurt innocents. To bullies and criminals. To anyone who thinks they can prey on the weak. But to people who just want to live their lives in peace, we're the best friends you'll ever have. The refugee thought about this, then nodded. Thank you for saving us. That's what we do, Sarah said simply. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humans had passed the test. Not the test the hierarchy designed, but a more important one. They had proven that their heroism at Threshold Station wasn't a fluke. It was who they were. The Deathworlders had answered the call again. And they would keep answering. Every time someone needed help, every time innocents faced danger, because that was what it meant to be human.